It's the third day of a new month, August, a chance for you to give Africa your best. Good afternoon, my name is Doreen Biira, and welcome to Africa Speaks. This week, it's all eyes on Zimbabwe, where we ask, is it a new dawn for Zimbabwe or it's just business as usual? And in studio, we host Zimbabwean citizens to share on Zimbabwe's election. And well, as Zimbabwe decides, we are asking you to tweet us, Zimbabwe Decides, and Africa Speaks are the hashtags that we are using this afternoon. But first, let's take a look at Web City. Cecile Kyenge, Italy's first black minister, has condemned a spectator who threw bananas towards her while she made a speech at a rally. The Congo-Kinshasa-born Italian integration minister has since appointment in April been a target of racist slurs. Far-right groups carried leaflets written on "Immigration Kills," referring to murders committed by immigrants in Italy. Although the bananas missed the stage where Kyenge was speaking, she responded to the gesture on Twitter, calling it sad and a waste of food considering the economic crisis. Kyenge has faced regular insults since becoming minister, often from other politicians. Earlier this month, a senior parliamentarian in the anti-immigration Northern League party likened her to an ape and only apologized after a storm of criticism. Now, this, of course, has gone abuzz social media. At Dear B06, how Cecile Kyenge is being treated in Italy, all because she is black and a female, just shows you how far behind we still are. And Click this week highlights President Mugabe, Africa's oldest head of state, casting his vote on July 31st. Robert Mugabe will turn 90 years in 6 months from now. Click this week, we show you pictures of Robert Mugabe accompanied by his wife Grace Mugabe as he casts his vote during the Zimbabwe election, where he hopes to lead for another 5-year term. Also, we share the long queues at various polling stations across Zimbabwe. Now it's that time where we get into the platform, and like we said, we're actually getting into a segment of the show called The Platform. And the signing of a new constitution, Zimbabwe's president, Robert Mugabe, in May paved way for general elections. That, the head of state, said not even Western pressure could deter his presidential ambitions. However, the one question that won't leave many minds is, does Zimbabwe still need Robert Mugabe, or Robert Gabriel Mugabe, after 33 years of leadership in a country whose inflation has gone way above 231%, the highest in the world? We're asking a question. Is it a new dawn for Zimbabwe, or it's just business as usual? Let's take a look at this story, and later on we'll be speaking to Zimbabwean guests that we are having in the studio this afternoon. On July 31st, 6.7 million Zimbabwean eligible voters took to the polls to cast their votes in what some sections believed would be a historic ballot. The queuing at polling stations that went on to wee hours of August 1st is already a sign that 89-year-old incumbent Robert Mugabe is in the lead. ZANU-PF party, as of Friday evening, was reported to have scooped 2/3 majority in the Zimbabwe parliament. And while the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is set to announce the official results on August 5th, Zimbabwe's Prime Minister and presidential candidate Morgan Tsvangirai has dismissed Wednesday's election as a huge farce and its outcome as null and void. Tsvangirai, speaking to press, questioned the credibility of the elections, which he said had been marred by administrative and legal violations. So is it a new dawn or business as usual for Zimbabwe? As the answer to that question is left to the Zimbabwean voters, it should also be noted that Robert Mugabe's ZANU-PF party aims to end the coalition government that many across Africa have criticized as having worsened Zimbabwe's economic situation. President Robert Mugabe, who has led the Southern African nation of 12.7 million people since independence in 1980, has been praised as much as he has been criticized.
While ZANU-PF continues to violate the law, persecute our members of parliament, spread the language of hate, invade productive farms, ignore our international treaties, and continue to loot our national resources. I'm not going to stand by and watch this happen.
While some uploaded his administration for implementing the Land Acquisition Act in 1992, sections believe Mugabe unfairly threw white farmers off land in Zimbabwe.
We cannot allow the British once again to dominate us here through their puppets.
33 years and on, could Africa's oldest president be Zimbabwe's only Iron Man?
We announced 27 June.
And well, we'd like to cross over to Zimbabwe, where we'd like to speak to a journalist there in Harare, and his name is Mugabe. I hope I got that right. Mugabe, if you can help me, if you can hear me now, good afternoon. Would like to know from you, how would you evaluate the entire election process after Zimbabweans cast their votes on the 31st of July? Mugabe, can you hear me? All right, I think I can't hear him quite very clearly, but we'll try as much as possible to get back to him so he can tell us exactly what happened in Zimbabwe on the 31st, where people cast their votes. Now, one thing to note, though, is that Zimbabwe had about 6.7 million eligible voters out of 12.75 million Zimbabweans. And of those, we are also looking at 1 million deceased voters, according to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. And we are looking at about 210 constituencies and about 10 provinces in Zimbabwe right there. But one thing that was, though, shocking is that about 30% of Zimbabweans who are below the age of 30 were actually not registered to vote. And let's try to get back to Mugabe, who is in Harare, Zimbabwe, to tell us what happened on the 31st. Mugabe, can you hear me now? Good afternoon. Mugabe, if you can hear me, just tell me exactly what happened on the 31st. All right, I'm going to skip that and just move on to our guests now who are in studio with us this afternoon. And with me is Ellen Mabenda, who is a Zimbabwean, and also we have Tatenda Chikwekwe. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It's such an honor.
Thank you very much.
And how do you feel about the fact that you didn't vote as a Zimbabwean? Did that affect you in any way? Let me start with Ellen.
It's really been hard to have hoped to vote, but it's unfortunate that people are already thinking that the elections are being rigged within. So if the elections are moved to outside, there will be more suspicions. So maybe it's better that way, that people voted in one place under one umbrella.
Right. Tatenda, are you affected by the fact that you didn't vote?
Yes, of course. I would have wanted to be part of the history, shaping the history of the nation. So yes, I am sad that I didn't manage to participate in this historical event.
Okay. Do you think that maybe having the diasporan vote would have had a change on the number of votes that President Robert Mugabe or incumbent candidate Robert Mugabe would have had?
Yes and no. There is a logistical reason that was given of why the diaspora vote could not happen, and then there's also political assumptions that are there, that the fact that you're out of Zimbabwe, you're obviously anti-Mugabe, which is an assumption Whether it's an intelligent or unintelligent assumption, that's another story altogether.
Well, we're asking you to tweet us as well. You can use the hashtag ZimDecides and Africa Speaks, and we'll be able to get some of those responses. On Facebook, you can reach our page, that is Africa Speaks. The official Twitter handle for the show is at KTN Africa Speaks, so you can be able to tweet us some of those questions or comments as well, and we'll be able to source out some of them. Now, Ellen, you have been here for a short period of time, and with what's happening in Zimbabwe at the moment, you know, a new constitution was ushered in, but what is a constitution if we're not seeing a new realm of leaders?
The constitution has just been drafted, so we really haven't felt it. But I think in years to come, if they are going to stick to it, we are going to be seeing a lot of changes. For example, there's been a cut of tenure in the office of the president. If, for example, the president who win now will obviously have maybe 10 years. Unlike what has been happening, we've been having a president continuously, and we don't know when the term will end. Right. Yes, but okay. I think that's the difference.
All right, and Tetenda, I would like to know from you, does Zimbabwe at the moment need President Robert Mugabe for another, say, 5-10 years?
Well, at the end of the day, I don't know if that will be down to my personal preference, but I mean, it's the will of the majority that speaks. And that's the purpose of elections, to determine whether Zimbabweans want Robert Mugabe to continue or not. So we wait the conclusive outcome, determination of whether this election was credible or not, to determine whether Zimbabweans want Mugabe to continue. But there's obviously opposition. I mean, the numbers do tell that there's some Zimbabweans that do not have Robert Mugabe as their preferred leader, and there's some who prefer him. So we'll wait and see the outcome. Well,
if you look at some of the presidential candidates that we've seen, some critics have actually said that there's no candidate among these presidential candidates per se who is strong enough to actually take out Robert Mugabe. So the question would be, what is it that Zimbabweans see that Robert Mugabe has that the Western world doesn't see it? You know, because it appears that the Western world has mounted a lot of pressure on him to give up power, but yet the vote always goes back to the same man.
I think there are people who he has done good to, because obviously when you like someone, it means they've done some good to you. And the fact that you like your parents doesn't mean the whole world will like your parents. They will remain your parents. Right. So that's democracy. Your freedom of preference, the freedom to choose and the liberty to choose, irrespective of what. So I think it's a right for every Zimbabwean to say, you know what, I prefer Robert Mugabe or Morgan Tsvangirai. It's a democratic right. We can't vilify people for liking President Mugabe or anything, or liking Morgan Tsvangirai, because there are significant people that don't like either one of them.
Well, a good number of people on the African continent are saying for Zimbabwe it's always going to be business as usual, because if we're going to have President Robert Mugabe as president maybe for the next 5 years, if the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission announces him winner of the presidential race, then we're going to see him as president for the next 5 years. So is it business as usual, or it's maybe time for a change?
We are not sure what's happening on the ground there, but I think it's time people accept what's there, because we know as we move, the constitution will make the change. It's painful that it's going to be a long time, but finally the constitution will be put at work and it will make all those changes.
Right. And does Zimbabwe still need him as president? Tetenda.
Does Zimbabwe still need him as president? I think the constitution right now, in terms of the direction, where the political and the national direction that Zimbabwe is going as a result of the coalition government, is that the constitution and the will and the voice of the people speaks much more than an individual. So there's that cushion then in terms of any concerns that people might have in terms of Mugabe. But then again, like I said, I mean, it's people. The will of the people has to be respected. The legitimate will of the people has to be respected.
And you think that the vote or the elections that Zimbabwe has held in the past have been a reflection of what Zimbabweans really want?
I can't say that. It's Zimbabwe is a very diverse. I know we read, you know, most people understand Zimbabwe from the newspaper and from TV, but it's much more diverse on the ground, and in terms of how the workings and the going-ons. So I can't. You can't tell, because the thing that we used to tell, the determining factor is the electoral result.
Yes.
That's what we used to tell. I can't, you know.
Well, Ellen, I would like to know from you, as a Zimbabwean woman, do you think that the administration of President Robert Mugabe has reflected gender equality from your own perspective?
I think, yes, it's taken into consideration women. For example, as you can see, we've got a vice president who's a female, and we've got a number of MP ladies in the government. So I think he has considered.
Right. Okay, now let's get back to our journalist in Harare, and hoping that this time we can actually hear him loud and clear. Nkube, if you can hear me, good afternoon once again. Can you just briefly evaluate for us the entire election process in Zimbabwe from your side of the story?
Well, the election in Zimbabwe have been quite better as compared to 2008. The people spoke, they went to the poll. Although there are some who feel that the situation is, the results have been rigged, although those still coming in. But I can tell you Zimbabweans have spoken their future. They've said that they want someone like Mugabe. That's the situation currently on the ground.
Yes, and the Prime Minister, who is also a presidential candidate, Morgan Tsvangirai, has already said that the election was not free and fair, and he said that it had a lot of violations there, electoral violations. But do you think that what he says holds water?
Well, the problem with his statement is that he's making them to them, but he has been in the process for the past 4.5 years. He has failed to correct what he wants to be corrected within a day. His statements don't hold water because the issue has been service delivery for the past 4 years.
Right. And I would like to know from you, do you think that what Zimbabweans want, because there have been allegations that much as Zimbabweans do not really want President Mugabe as the next president for the country, there seems to be people who still want him there because of their vested interests. Is that the same feeling in Zimbabwe?
If you are to be in the street of Harare right now, I can tell you Zimbabweans are so shocked about the result. But the same problem is Zimbabweans, they failed to choose their leader based on service delivery, which the MDC led by Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai did when they were in government. Zimbabweans don't want President Robert Mugabe, but they had no choice. The Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai failed to protect them from intimidation, failed to protect them when ZANU-PF was rigging these elections. At the end of the day, they are now left with no choice but to accept Mugabe, although he could do nothing to solve the country's economic woes.
Right. And how would you evaluate the opposition in Zimbabwe? Because from the African context, we always see that if a leader has led for more than 15 years, then we are going to have an opposition that is really trying so hard to prove to the rest of Africa that look, we are actually trying to do something. So from you and from the side at which you are right now, how strong is the opposition in Zimbabwe?
Before 2008, the opposition was so strong. I can tell you the truth. The opposition was so strong, but now the moment they went into the inclusive government, they were exposed to a lot of corruption, a lot of luxury living, which the people of Zimbabwe do not want. And the people of Zimbabwe are saying it is better the devil we know than the devil which we might think is better, yet he might be a better devil than we would want.
Right, and finally, do you think that the announcement of the results by the Zimbabwe's Electoral Commission is really going to be a surprise to Zimbabweans, or it's just going to be business as usual?
There are two things I want to tell you. Number one, the announcement itself might be a surprise to many general people, many MD supporters, thousands, millions of them. But it's not going to be a surprise to those right-thinking Zimbabweans who went to the poll and decided to vote for Mugabe. Let me tell you, the MDC lost this election during the voter election period, during the pre-campaign era. That's when they lost the election. They never lost the election on the polling day. They are not going to lose the election on announcement of the results, but they lost the election pre-voting era.
Right, and lest I forget, actually, Baba Jukwa, if you've read about him, I'm sure he's been across all the media papers there. What is the feeling about him currently in Zimbabwe? Have there been any leads leading to who exactly he might be?
Then, that faceless Baba Jukwa character is one man whom Zimbabweans relied upon for information. He has helped a lot for people to know the ongoings in ZANU-PF, the ongoings in government. But the problem is he failed to push the youth, particularly the youth, to go and register and vote, to go and register to vote, to go and vote as well. This is what he failed to do. People in Zimbabwe, the ZANU-PF have put about 300 million on the head of Baba Jukwa. People want to know who is this man, because he is more of a person who can destroy the secret services of this country, of Zimbabwe, particularly dealing with ZANU-PF.
Right.
And he has threatened to do so even in the next government, which is likely to be a ZANU-PF full-scale government.
Well, thank you so much, Nkube. I do appreciate your contribution to KTN Africa Speaks. I will be getting back to you a little later for more details on the proceedings in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much. And that was Nkube, a journalist based in Zimbabwe, telling us what exactly is happening on the ground there. And well, from what he said, it actually seems like a lot of Zimbabweans are favoring or are in favor of President Robert Mugabe. But before we wind up, do you think that Zimbabwe has been painted in negative light or in the wrong light by the Western powers in this case, and we are also going to have to add President Robert Mugabe?
Considering that most of the white Zimbabweans, the dual citizenship, one being the United Kingdom, so after the land distribution, most white people, they lost their lands. So it was a normal reaction for them because they sort of like felt they were protecting one of their own. So that's why they painted us, they painted the country in that way. But I think it's something that can be corrected. And already I think it's underway because lately we've heard that some of the officials, senior government officials who were on sanctions, they've been lifted. So we are hoping that it's going to keep on going that way on the positive side. Right.
Tatenda, do you think the same?
Yes and no. I think by Western media, not necessarily Western powers and governments, I think there is tendency to exaggerate in all media. I mean, Kenya has been victim of such exaggerations and sensationalizations from the media.
Right.
I think the portrayals of Zimbabwe as a racist country that is non-white. I mean, I meet people in Nairobi and they tell me, you guys, you chased Wazungus out of, like, you know, we chase white people in the streets, which is a complete exaggeration of the situation on the ground.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that were reported by people because of their political opinion or towards the ruling party in Zimbabwe, but it's not entirely true. There are things that are accurate and there are things that are grossly inaccurate in terms of you know, the reporting and the portrayal of Zimbabwe.
Well, we're out of time. I wish I could go on for long, but I'm just going to read two tweets here under the hashtag Africa Speaks. Ambuli Victor is saying, I'm now watching Africa Speaks and I can't afford to believe Zimbabwe's election results. I think that's business as usual. And Anthony Nyasimi is saying no investments will be done in commercial farms, mining sector, tourism and energy. And well, we also have another here. We're saying the elections are just a representation that Robert Mugabe is portrayed in negative light. Well, this conversation continues online under the hashtags Zim Decides and Africa Speaks, and be sure that we'll be able to recap some of those, and this conversation will continue on and on. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Africa Speaks. I really do appreciate that. And well, just like we said, you can reach us on our social media platforms. Our Twitter handle is at KTN Africa Speaks. My name is Doreen Biira. Good afternoon.